I am Ann Stone. I have had the honor of being one of the founding parents of the Fatherhood Council. I work at Department of Social and Health Services in the Economic Services Administration. So that is where all of the safety net services live, public benefits kinds of programs. But I really work for the Washington Fatherhood Council, which is a very broad, diverse group of state agencies, local partners, advocates, but very importantly, dads with lived experience that make up at least a third, and some of our meetings, probably more like half of the room. So we're always informed by folks who come to this conversation through the lens of fathers' experiences. We have the great opportunity to hear part two of our conversation that we began last month around expecting male involvement, and a very special treat to get to meet Mike Brown's two um, clients, customers. I'm not sure, Mike, what your relationship is, how you would describe it. You can tell everybody about that when you come on. Um, a young man who became a parent recently, and his mom, and sharing their story and understanding the dynamics around young parenting. So, Dieter, you want to jump to the next slide? We always talk about this through the lens of intentionally calling out fatherhood rather than parenting, because oftentimes in our systems, when we say parenting, what dads will say is we don't necessarily feel like that includes us. Um, so the research tells us why we do that. And we do that for really four main reasons. There are three here, but I'm going to amend that because it's so important for us to be thinking about the fourth one when we come together. And the first is just very basic, but not well incorporated data that we know fathers make a positive impact on child and family outcomes. And just remember, when we use the term fathers in the context of this council, we really mean a very big tent. That's any kind of father figure, same-gendered parenting, trans parenting, anybody who plays that role. There is a unique role around biological fathers and children, but we really focus on all kids, all father figures and fathers. And the reason that we know that that's important is that fathers play a unique role in child development. Nature created a system that required two sets of parents and two different brains and two different types of parenting styles to create those neural pathways in early development that lay down our resilience and our social and emotional skills over the lifetime. And it is super important that we have those different parenting styles in terms of children's well-being and how they develop. So it isn't just we need them at the beginning and then we need their paycheck. And that's what a lot of the stereotype is around, right? We hear that still even now in this decade, that fathers are really not that necessary, except darn it, we got to get that financial support. But dads are nurturers, dads are guides. It's a really perfect system when it works well to get kids a good start in life. And then lastly, on this list, we know that there are lots of resources for families, and there are few resources that are culturally specific for fathers. And so we really need to work intentionally about how we think about that and how we support fathers to become the fathers that they aspire to be. And then lastly, before I turn this over, just a couple other quick things. We are always focused on the child and family as our North Star, and that means co-parenting. So thinking about when you use the word single parent, what do you really mean about that other parent? Are they in the child's life? Are they not in the child's life? If they're not cohabitating, what is the shared parenting time that they have? Those are all really important things for us to think of as we interact with families. And so I would say there's a fourth key message here, and that is that we need to be very intentional about thinking about whole families very concretely in terms of how we set up our systems. So I am going to just thank our sponsors, the Department of Social and Health Services and the Department of Health, for this wonderful series. We have now spoken to over 2,000 of you over the last couple of years about topics on fatherhood, and we're super excited to launch this conversation with Mike and Sara and her son. And so I'm going to hand it over to Mike Brown at the University of Washington. I'll let him tell you what he wants to tell you about his role and his background. Thanks, Mike, and thanks, Sara, for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here, rocking my Bills gear, as you can see, and I'm happy to be in community with you all. My name is Mike Brown. My pronouns are he, him. I'm the Senior Director of Community Engagement at Cultivate Learning, and I'm joined by, you didn't know what to call her, but I'm going to call her the homie. I'm going to call her a friend. I'm going to call her a colleague, and I'm also going to call her family. So, Sara.
Thank you so much, Mike. I'm honored to be here and to be able to have this opportunity to connect through family, really, because Mike was introduced to me by my sister who works with him, and to provide a platform of empowerment for not only my own son, who is a teen dad, but others that are in similar situations. That we were talking a little bit before we started, that this isn't very often we get opportunities like this for empowerment and celebration of dads who want to be involved, regardless of their age or their situation. So we're really happy to be here. Thank you so much, Mike.
Thank you. And I'm going to pop it over to D to introduce himself real quick. What's up, homie? He's on mute. You're on mute, buddy.
Sorry about that, guys. I'm D. It's good to be here today. I was looking forward to this just because of the fact that not a lot of times do I get to talk about my experience as a teen dad. Normally it's something that, like, when I go around kids my age, I don't really talk about it that much just because I know how uncommon it is. But I'm excited to be in a space where that's encouraged and no judgment. Thank you, Mike.
Absolutely. And so we're going to get started in a little bit, but I just want to set some context. First of all, I want to start by opening up and saying that we're all on Indigenous land. And so it's important not just to do a land reflection, or excuse me, a land acknowledgement, but to really reflect about where you are in this world and how are we all a guest on Indigenous land. And so I hope that you take that and think about how can you receive with the mind, how can you determine with the spirit, how can you give with your emotions, and how can you hold with the body, all the different ways we can continue to support Indigenous storytelling, because today is all about storytelling, about Indigenous journalism, question around how do you support destructive and maybe extractive practices of Indigenous cultures, land, resources, and souls. And as we move forward to rehabilitation and restorative justice, how can we also work to diversify our source of education and entertainment that shows a counter narrative to the master narrative? So as we learned from part 1, which is available on the website, there is a myth that men, and especially BIPOC men, are unresponsive caregivers. When we see even though we have the research that 70% of Black men, they're changing diapers, they're present, they're powerful, and they aren't doing it because they're being asked to do it. They're doing it because they want to, because they care. And so when we think about the creation of such narratives of the despondent Black and BIPOC father, we can actually we can use that to shape and mold some of our policies and practices, whether it's wage and hour standards, unemployment benefits, reemployment services, occupational safety and health, all these things were we covered in part 1. And so when we think about the narratives that BIPOC fathers aren't in the home, we can lead to how we interact with our child support enforcement laws, which then leads to incarceration in colorblind courts, which leads to the narrative that children are fatherless, which leads to the potential effects of crime and poverty and educational failure, which leads back to social perspectives of race, and then the cycle continues. And so when we say male caregivers or fathers, right, we also mean male presence in all the different avenues of life. And so we encourage you all to find father-focused events, to hire more male staff into your community, to invite fathers and males and men to volunteer, to invite and include them in professional development activities, because fathers are a crucial socialized agent in a child's life. And so we need to ask ourselves, what social worlds do we want our children of color to inherit? Because young men of color infer their mattering, their partial mattering, their whole mattering from the social institutions that they partake in. And so we have to ask ourselves, do father of colors matter, y'all? And I know we're going to say yes, but if so, then where? Because if we say they matter, then we also have to push back on all the areas in which we say that they don't. Right? All the ways in which we have the mythology of the absent father, all the ways it shows up in our income and our wage inequities, in our higher rates of unemployment, in our incarceration system, in our policing, in our racism, in how we call it the controlling images through our adultification and the narrowing of masculinity, which leads us all to today. What do young fathers of colors need? What do young fathers of color need? And so we're going to pop into a video that we pre-recorded. And then as you are watching the video, and that's my cue to Anna cue that up, we encourage you all to use the chat to think about some of the questions being asked, the conversations having, type your aha moments, what's coming up for you into the chat. We're going to engage there. And then after the first video, we're going to take some Q&A with Sara and Dee. And so take it away, Ann. You.
Yeah.
I guess we'll just start by what's your name? What's your story, dog?
So my name is Diako Vasconcelos. I guess why I'm here today is to more so talk about teen parenthood and specifically teen parenthood of people of color. Obviously that's not the only thing that my story consists of, being a teen parent. The reason I'm a teen parent is because I was going through a phase of my life where my judgment was there was a lot of error in my judgment. Things such as, using hard drugs, and that really messed with me. That really, not only did I make errors in judgment, such as having a kid super early, but doing things such as, forgetting the people that are important to me and treating them like I don't even know them. And most importantly, not respecting myself because of the things I was doing. And I'm happy to be in a place now where I've gained all of my self-respect back, and I'm able to talk about this thing like it's past tense.
Man, that's pretty powerful. That's I mean, when we talk about fatherhood, we don't ever talk about the present, right? So this workshop is talking about present and powerful caregivers, male caregivers. And so I just want to commend you on the fact that you've come so far, and you still got ways to go,
right,
things like that.
Of course.
So can you just talk about, like, when you think about yourself as a father, who do you envision yourself as?
Well, I think one of the most important things that is kind of neglected as fathers, we were kind of talking about how the world sees us as just the disciplinary, that's our only role. And I think one of the biggest, I think it's the right way to use, stigma that I want to kind of break, because one thing that's so important to me as a father is emotional presence. And especially as a father of a young girl, emotional presence is super important, because raising a kid who's in touch with their emotions that's important. I really value that. And I don't want to be that person that says, hey, don't show your emotions around me, don't cry around me. No, because at the end of the day, I know if it's not me, then my child is gonna do that to somebody else, and I would hate to be not trusted with her emotions.
Mm,
Um, so I think that comes number one for me, emotional presence. Obviously, there's a lot of other like priorities as a dad,
yeah, of course.
but I want to teach my kid to be connected with their emotions.
You know, I think that's super cool. That's super dope because a lot of times the narrative is that we as males, we're not caring, we're
Right.
not emotional.
Mhm.
I always, you know, me and Nikki, who was on part one, we always talk about um how we like search for videos of dogs,
Yeah.
seeing their humans come back
Uh-huh.
after being in war or
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
and like that always, you know what I mean? I've been tearing up like, and so how are like how in touch or what are ways you think you're showing up
Mhm.
to show that you can be more than just that?
Well, I don't want to compare myself to other dads, but I think it's like important in this scenario to like look at certain dads and see, let's say, for example, when something like a huge like milestone happens in my daughter's life,
Mhm.
you know, I think, and I don't want to like read people's minds, but I think some dads are kind of afraid to show emotion when those like certain milestones come up. Like, of course, they're going to show happiness, but they show it in a certain way. And what I mean by that is like they're like, ah, great job, but they won't truly feel free to express their excitement all the way. I have to kind of suppress my excitement and be the one that like has control. Like, yeah, good job, but I can't show all the way my
Mhm.
excitement. I think that's one of the biggest things for me. It doesn't make me weaker to show, I guess, like my appreciation for my daughter or like my excitement when she reaches a huge milestone. Sometimes that can be seen as like the mom's job, right? To be like all happy and the dad is like, good,
Cool, calm,
yeah,
collected all the time.
like good job, you took your first steps. Now it's time to, I like to be, I'm excited for you. Like, you know what I mean? It doesn't make me weaker
Uh-huh.
because I knew if it was time to protect my daughter, I would do what I would need to do without a doubt. But yeah.
Where do you think that stems from? Where do you think that comes from? This ideology or this idea that we have to act a certain way.
Mm. Um, I mean, to be honest, I would say that comes from society. I would say that almost like, I mean, if nobody has like if nobody's taking the strong role,
Mhm.
it's almost like things are not, they're not going to work, and somebody has to take that strong role. And I do agree with the fact that, you know, there is like a sense of strength that comes with being a fatherhood. I mean, being a father.
Yeah,
Um, but I don't like it being like, I don't like it being like a rule for us that we,
Thanks.
we are strong, and yes, we teach our children how to be strong, but at the same time, being strong doesn't conflict with being connected with your emotions.
Facts, facts. That's something me and my therapist be talking about all the time.
Right.
And so even kind of drilling down into that, yeah, we talk about society as a whole, but
Mhm.
what about in your own personal life? Do you
Mhm.
think whether it's machismo, whether
Mhm.
it's whatever that you want to label it, where does it show up in your life as you navigate at your age?
Um, like meaning, like, can you repeat, like, break
So
that?
so basically, where's it showing up in your friends, in the
Mhm.
media you consume, rather than saying in a larger society
Mhm.
that this is how men should act?
Okay, like how was that stigma kind of being okay?
Perpetuated in your own life. Yep.
Okay, well, for sure. Like, I'd say I'd say like, okay, firstly, a lot of my friends that I've
Mhm.
made when I was in middle school are still my friends now. And I was talking a little bit about how, because of my own experiences, I do feel like, I'm not saying we're not friends anymore, but I do feel like emotionally I've grown past a lot of them.
Yeah.
And a part of their thinking, that's still their thinking, is that um, the man is supposed to be strong and he's not able to talk about his emotions. And it's still like that. I can't get some of my friends to open up to me. and I've stopped trying to do that, you know? And so even though I'm very comfortable in my own skin, I still definitely feel that pressure when I'm around them not to talk about my emotions, just because it's such a regular thing among us. And I used to be the same way, you know, I used to be the same exact way as they are right now. Um, so I'd say my friends is one of them. And I don't want to just cut them off because I don't feel like that's right.
Yeah, yeah.
So my friends is one of them. Um, social media is, I think, is one of them too. Certain people can say that, oh, it depends what your social media looks like and what your feed consists of. But a lot of my social media consists of like strong, powerful men, you know. I guess kind of like this girl left me when I was down, and now I'm up, and now like I'm not showing my emotions because I'm so hurt that I don't
hurt.
right.
Yeah.
So that's one of the big ones. And even as like connected as I am with my emotions right now, I still get a craving to kind of like be machismo when I see things like that on social media, because it gives you a sense of like, oh man, I'm gonna do that too, you know? And that's hard to avoid sometimes. And you gotta like ground yourself and remember what your roots are. Remember, that's not me. That's not necessarily the right way to approach things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Super important that we continue to be ourselves, even in the face of resistance, because that's what our people are built with, right? Resistance, rebellion, being the counter narrative to the master narrative.
I was looking at something and it was talking about how part of being a man is having an open heart, even though it hurts.
Let me write that down. Say that again. Say that again for the camera.
It's part of being a man is having an open heart, even though it hurts.
I love that.
And that's kind of tough, you know, because I say the best way I can explain that is being connected with your emotions. It's going to hurt sometimes because people are going to see that as weakness, but you have to remember that that's strength. Even when people are going to try to use that against you.
Facts.
People are going to see that as weakness. Oh, he's the guy who is connected with his emotions. I can hurt him because he's in touch with his emotions. You know, Bobby's not. Bobby shuts down his emotions, but Ronnie, he's super in touch with his emotions, so I can get to him. You know, and you have to. That's kind of a sticky situation. That's kind of like something that's hard to navigate sometimes because you have to, I guess, like you have to decipher between when it's the right time to be connected with your emotions and when it's you have to set your boundary with people. Yeah.
And sometimes I don't even think it has to be either or.
Either or, for sure. Yep.
Because you can set boundaries with people and still be emotionally
like, you know
mature.
What? Like, you know what, that kind of hurt, but I can't associate with you anymore. You know, but I'm not, it doesn't make me smaller to admit that hurt me.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. And so with that kind of line of thinking, I'm interested in hearing, how have you seen society systems, especially when you're out in public, you're interacting with people, with your daughter, how do you think they see you as an emotional being, someone who's emotionally present, emotionally strong, and try to use that against you?
Well, are you more asking how, so people see me as somebody who's connected with their emotions, and you're asking how they use that against me?
Yeah, absolutely. So for example, people are like, "Oh, Mike, you change diapers. Oh, you soft, you stuff like that." Right? And so they try to weaponize that against me. And it's like, well, I might change diapers. Yeah, I might cuddle. I might do all of that. I might be the small spoon. But you know what? I can still go outside and, change a tire. I can still go outside and do this, whatever you call as manly.
I'd say that's a good question, because I feel like I've faced a lot of like maybe that type of judgment from women rather than other men. And I'd say like when I first got home, I did have my attempt at a relationship, and the fact that I'm a dad kind of increased like my emotions when it came to like wanting a relationship. I kind of wanted someone to be like a stepmom for my daughter almost. And that's, first of all, that's unfair to ask at this age, because preparing to be a stepmom or a mom.
It's still hard at 30, but yeah.
For
some
sure.
people.
But I remember moments like I had my girlfriend at the time over, and she was witnessing me and my daughter's interactions, and she would see that like I'm the only one taking care of my daughter at the moment, and I have to do things like you said, changing her diaper, rocking her to sleep,
Mhm.
doing all the things that the mother would be seen as doing. And I could see how, especially because we come from a culture that's like the man does this, the woman does this.
Mhm.
She looked at me a little weird, even though she didn't say anything about it, because she might have felt that it was wrong. She
Mhm.
looked at me like, I wonder why is he doing that,
Mm.
And that kind of like definitely hurt a little bit because that's somebody I cared about, but at the same time, I prioritize my daughter over any girl.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's hard. I'm not going to explain myself to a girl and be, hey, I have to like this is, if you're judging me about who I am as a father, it's not my responsibility to explain myself to you. But this is what I have to do because at the same time, I'm not with the mother of my child. I don't live with her. So when my daughter's with me, I'm kind of like the mother and the father.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'm interested in hearing about how have you rediscovered yourself
Hmm.
and relearned about like who you are
Hmm.
as a person, and then what are you learning about yourself as a father?
Well, I think I think one of the biggest things that I guess I wouldn't say like learned about myself, but I would say relearned about myself
Mhm.
because I knew that empathy has always been a big part of me since I was a kid. It's been taught to me through nurture. Like
Mhm.
you're like when somebody gets hurt, you help them,
Yeah.
And I'd say like I kind of disconnected with that as I started to go through my struggles in life.
Mhm.
And having a having a child really helped me reconnect with that because it was almost like it wasn't my choice whether to be empathetic or not. Like
Mm.
it almost like it when your daughter gets hurt or it does something to you, you know what I mean? It does something to you and you cannot change that. And that was one of my biggest things, reconnecting with I guess you would call it a soft side, but reconnecting with my emotional side.
Yeah.
Um, not saying you have to have a kid to do that,
Yeah.
but just saying it really did something to me in that aspect.
And so switching gears to you and your co-parent,
Hmm.
what is that relationship like? Because you don't live together,
I like that. I like this question.
you don't live together. And so I just wonder about what does that relationship look like?
Okay.
How are you navigating it? What are the challenges?
Mhm.
And also, what are the strengths? What are some things that you want to celebrate about that?
Okay. I like that because so basically, yeah. So me and my daughter's mom were not together. Um, so right now I'm not even doing the communication when it comes to picking up my child. My mom is the third party, and
Hmm.
actually having a third party that handles the communication is really a good approach to that because I feel like if I and this is no shot to my daughter's mom, all due respect to her, but I feel like if I was being the one in charge of the communication, that she would use that as a way to manipulate me
Hmm.
and she would use that as a way to almost bring up things that she knows are emotional for me to pull me back in. And I feel like it's my responsibility to prevent that from happening. And I wouldn't necessarily say she's like a threat to my family, but I don't think she's the best person. Let's say this, I don't feel like she's very aligned with my way of thinking.
Okay.
And keeping it as keeping it cordial is very important to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds kind of cold when I'm saying like, well, I can't talk to her, but the reality of things is that I have to be very short when it comes to like my communication. Like things have to be brief. They have to be the communication has to consist only of what's important to know about my daughter.
Yep.
And I learned that there cannot be any how do you say like there cannot be very much emotions in that kind of communication just because that's when the manipulation takes place. And, like I said, she's not a terrible person, but I can't blame her for wanting the dad of her daughter with her.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think it's good because you're balancing you know, communication, you're balancing also what's good for you. 'Cause a
Mhm.
lot of times, and it's not being self-centered.
Mm-mm.
It's not saying, it's not putting you above your daughter.
Nope.
It's you actually saying, I value our daughter so much
Mhm.
that for our well-being as a family, as for myself, as well as for my relationship
Right.
with my own family, with my relationship with my daughter,
Right.
I need to prioritize us being short, professional, whatever that may look
Yep.
like, because this isn't about us. And I feel like if I'm back in this relationship with
Mhm.
you, our daughter's gonna suffer.
Right. And I can't say that I'm perfect, you know. I've kind of had to learn the hard way when it comes to me and my co-parent. I had to learn the hard way. I had to learn why I'm truly being, I guess you could say, like professional and brief with her. And I had my therapist talking to me about it and giving me the same exact advice that like I'm telling you right now about like being, you know, professional.
Mhm.
But it's almost like I didn't believe that until I had to experience it for myself. So I did have moments where like I was very it was very sentimental almost because that is the mother of my daughter and I did want to
Absolutely.
pursue that relationship because or for my daughter, I should say.
Yeah.
But I realized that I was being kind of selfish because I was more fulfilling my own desires rather than doing what's best for my daughter. And that's the last thing I want to do. And that the last thing I want to do is have my daughter in a situation where she's like, Dad, I would have been better off if you and mom weren't together, but now just because you wanted to be with her, now I am struggling. And that's hard, you know?
Mhm.
And so I really had to make a decision about what's most important to me.
And as you're saying that, it just reminds me of a lot of times the narrative is if you're not together with your child's mom,
Yeah.
from a male perspective, then you're absent.
And I want to talk about that a little bit just
Mm.
because I have faced that stereotype as an absent father, as a father who left his daughter's mom, you know, and I have been, I guess, seen as the wrong, like the guy who did wrong to
Yeah.
his, you know, and she definitely did her part of kind of like perpetuating that victim stance. And it was hard to because I'm not gonna go on social media and be like, well, she did wrong to me, you know.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not gonna play some petty game. I had to kind of let my own work speak for itself.
Mhm.
And I did tell the truth about the fact that like when people ask me, why are you not with your daughter's mom? You know, because they might see it as I'm the wrong or
Yeah,
like I'm
yeah.
the guy who's doing the wrong. I say she's just not the best person for me, and being with her isn't what's best for my daughter. And so that kind of it kind of lets them know, first of all, I don't have anything to prove to you, but second of all, I'm making a decision based off of me prioritizing my daughter.
Mhm. And so, what are ways in which people look at you as seeing you and labeling you as absent?
Mhm.
How are you combating that stereotypes? In which ways are you showing
Mhm.
up for your daughter?
Well, I talked about emotional presence, but physical presence obviously is one of the most important things. Even though I'm 17 at the moment and I don't have a full-time or part-time job right now. But I'm using that as a way to whenever my daughter comes over, I'm with her all the
Mhm.
time. And yeah, I do post her on social media, not for other people to say, hey,
Yeah.
you know,
Because you're proud.
yeah, I'm proud of, you know, I'm proud of my daughter. I love her and my social media consists of things that are important to me. And so obviously my daughter's a part of that. And when people see that, they see, okay, they have really no choice but to see, oh, this is the truth. He is present for his daughter, you know, and that feels good
Mhm.
because I don't want to give anybody ammunition to say he's absent, you know. Um, not trying to prove myself, but at the same time, being a present father is important to me. So yeah.
And so, thinking about the males in your life,
Mhm.
can you talk to a little bit about the male role models?
Do you want me to name names or
Just like how are they showing up? What have you
okay.
gleaned? What have you learned from
Okay.
them? Gleaned from them? What are you taking from them and applying
Mhm.
into your relationship with your daughter,
Yeah.
or just in general? Like how are they helping
Me.
uh, shape you?
Okay. Um, I was talking to my mom about this. I think one of the most important aspects of being a man is you can't I feel like it's childish to dismiss the truth. So let's say, and I was taught this, if another man is telling me something that I know is valid, I can't dismiss the validity of that.
Facts.
Because the second I do, like let's say somebody's calling me out and holding me accountable because I might be having an attitude. I can't say, man, like get out of here, leave me alone, because the second I do, you make yourself look like a little boy.
Mhm.
You know? And that's the last thing I want to do. I want to look like, or not look, but I want to be a mature person who is respectable, not somebody who's like, when people talk about me, they're like, oh, he never listens. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so listening to the truth and being receptive to it, even when it hurts, is one of the biggest things that my male role model have taught me.
Mm.
I guess that kind of intertwines with accountability.
Mhm. And so how are you juggling with the accountability piece? How are you juggling all the life events? I mean, you're 17, you have a child, you're going to school,
Mhm.
you're looking for work,
Mhm.
you got to be present with your family, all
Right.
these other things.
I can't sit up here and say that I'm perfect or that I've never had my moments of stress, because things, like I said, it's a lot for a 17-year-old, you know?
Mhm.
I have had my moments with, like, I guess, relapse and stuff like that. I've had my moments. Um, I've had my moments of like losing my emotional composure and just feeling like that feeling when you feel like life is ending and you just want to shut down. And
Mhm.
I've had those moments, and it's been really hard to admit that, because I take so much pride in how I handle things, that when I don't handle things well, I feel like it's a big blow to my self-esteem.
Mhm.
And so there have been moments where I haven't handled things well, but I can only say that I'm working to handle things well as much as I can. But I have a therapist, I meet with my therapist,
Mhm.
and I have my outlets that really help. I don't think I would be able to handle all of life's events if it weren't for my outlets, such as bodybuilding,
Yeah.
such as just, I think bodybuilding is one of the main ones, but yeah. So yeah, I think outlets are super important.
So I know that you got your grandpa down the road.
Mhm.
I guess because he came from which country again?
Iran.
He came from Iran, and he had your mom and your aunt pretty young as well.
Yeah.
Right. And so how are you connecting with him, perhaps over this, I just wonder about, like, what is he teaching you?
Mhm.
What have you learned from him? What are you looking at, like, hey, we can really connect,
Mhm.
even though
Well,
we're generations apart.
so specifically, are you asking if having a kid early helped us connect even more, or are you more so talking about how we connect as men in general?
Both.
Okay.
And like, what wisdom have maybe you've seen him and you go, wow, I've never thought about that, or
Okay.
you're providing me with something I just never
Well,
clicked.
one thing about my grandfather, he's a very philosophical man.
He is, I met
Very
him.
philosophical. So I think one of the biggest ways that we've started to connect, especially as I've started to grow into a young man, is having somebody there to understand him. Because I grew up in a family of predominantly women. So as men, it was very hard to feel understood.
Mm.
And as a young boy, of course, I wasn't able to validate his emotions like he needed. But as I'm growing into a young man, I know I'm starting to realize that I'm feeling some of the same emotions he feels.
Mm.
And not only am I trying to understand him, but now I crave that understanding too. And so I guess we're kind of meeting each other's needs in that sense. That's one of the biggest things we need as men, to be understood.
And so what do you want your daughter, say, in 20 years? Because she's 2 right now, right? 2?
One.
She's 1?
Yeah.
What do you want her in 20 years when she's 21 and you're chopping it up at her graduation or whatever, to be like, hey, Dad, when I think about you, I think of this.
I think emotional presence, like I said before, is definitely one of them. Like I want her to tell me, you always made, I wanna thank you for being someone who I always felt so free to feel my emotions with. Um, I don't even, it's kind of interesting because even though her mom, like even though the mom, like I said, is seen by society to be that one where it's like,
Mhm.
you know, the soft side, her mom necessarily isn't very in touch with her emotions. And so I want to be that person that she can come to. I don't want to give her no options.
Mm.
And so I want her to, I guess what's important to me is her to tell me that you were that person. You know, I could come to you. I didn't have to find that outside of my family.
And two more questions that are coming up to my mind is to piggyback off of what you just said. What do you need society to to do or to change, or businesses to change, or whoever's listening right now, and however you're coming to the space, what do you need from them so that you'll be able to enter these spaces and feel like I belong, I deserve to be here?
Can you rephrase that question?
So a lot of our services aren't necessarily father friendly.
Right.
And so to create or to reimagine all of our services, our programs, our places that we go to, where they just go, oh, you're the disciplinary,
Right.
or we're gonna wait, where's mom?
Okay.
What do you need them to change,
I-
whether in their attitudes or practices or policies?
I guess one of the biggest things, and I feel like this is, I can't, I feel like one of the biggest things, and this is kind of all they can do, is to keep an open mind about what the role of a father is. If everybody just kept an open mind and about that, and I guess like when they think about a father, didn't limit like their beliefs, like didn't like put limits on fathers, didn't put like limitations on them when it comes to what they're supposed to do. If everybody thought that way and didn't have limits, I feel like it would make me feel a lot more comfortable. And I can't necessarily say society has to do one thing to do that, because really all you can do is people have to keep an open mind as a group. Like people have to put an effort to keeping an open mind, and everybody has to do that in order for fathers to feel more safe in their own skin. Because I know that I feel secure in my emotions, but I know that there are other teen fathers that are struggling with showing their emotions.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not for it's not they didn't just like become, they weren't born with that. You know, it was, they were taught that you're not supposed to be like this.
Yeah.
And it is kind of frustrating that like society did that because they weren't born with that, you know?
Sure.
And I know how it feels to suppress your emotions. It feels bad. It feels terrible. Um, and I guess that's like my one wish for society, to keep an open mind and not to put limitations on what a father should be.
And so my last question is, what would be your message to other teen fathers?
I would say you're going to want you're going to want to you're going to hit a point in your life where you're going to want to still be a teenager and do fun teenage things. And no matter how important your child is to you, you're going to see your other friends who are teenagers and realize that they don't have to deal with that. They don't have the responsibility of being a father. They can go out more than you. They can, you know, I don't want to call it freedom, but they can they're more available than you are. And I want to talk about kind of that availability, and not seeing that lack of availability as something that like makes you less cool, or something that you know, I think one of the biggest parts of being a dad as a teen is being vocal about the fact that you have different responsibilities now. And I'm really glad that my friends can respect that, because they know that when they're doing certain things, I can't do those things with them because I have a daughter. Like, you know, I can't go and stolen cars or do just crazy stuff that people used to do. You know what I mean? I can't afford to do that anymore. Like, I used to be the one who was like, I used to be the one who did that. You know, I used to be the one who started that. Like, oh, you guys want to do something? I'm the one to come to. You know. Now I'm like, oh, you guys are doing something. Let me just stay away from that.
Yeah.
You know. And one of the biggest important things as being a teen dad is making sure that you have people around who prioritize your kid just as much as you do.
Right.
Yeah.
Appreciate you, all.
Yep.
All right. I hope y'all enjoyed that. Please in the chat throw out any ideas or any thoughts that's coming up for you, as well as show D some love, because I mean he's a 70-year-old in a 17-year-old body. And so I was pretty impressive. I love it. We're going to get into some questions right now and keep this train moving. So the first one, I kind of want to start off my access to you, Sara, to begin with, because D, you're coming in today, you're a little bit out the way, you had some bouts with mental health that you mentioned at the top of the video, and you're coming home today, and we're happy to excited to welcome you back. And that was after you realized that you needed some extra support, and you went and you got it. And so if that ain't understanding that you need support and it's bigger than you, if that's not showing people that you're a present and powerful caregiver, then I don't know what is. And so what are some of the signs that Sara, you saw in him, as well as D, let's get you off mute too, that you've seen in yourself, that made you said, hey, I actually need to go and get the support?
Yeah, that's a great question. And thank you for bringing transparency to our story here, Mike, and destigmatizing talking about mental health, because we always want to step into that courageous space and be part of that. Our story means so much more, and our recovery as a family means so much more when we're able to give it away. And I think what Dee and I have both learned is how to be more in tune with one another earlier on when we see signs of struggle. Maybe things like self-isolation or closing the channel a little bit, stopping to use the tools that are so fringe, unfortunately, in everyday kind of culture out there, just popular culture, especially amongst young folks, amongst teens, still not normalized to go to therapy, to journal, to be in touch with your emotions. Like a lot of the stuff that Dee was shedding light upon, far beyond his years, in the interview that y'all did. And so, yeah, I'm not going to be afraid to call him out, but also connect in a loving way when I see, like, hey, you're not using your tools right now. Remember, we put these in place for a reason. If you want to go and seek rock bottom, I don't have to provide a space for you to hit rock bottom in my home, in front of my face, in my space where I'm now supporting you and taking care of your daughter and raising your daughter. So holding that firm and loving boundary, but saying, if you do need support, if you do need help, I am willing to provide that. And look, you're going to become an adult soon in the eyes of the law. This is what adults do when they need support. They reach out and they proactively go and get it. So to lovingly and firmly both provide that pathway for Diako and also model for him how to provide it for his daughter.
Love it. What about you, D?
For me, yeah, I want to piggyback off of what my mom said, just because of she said something that was important. She said we had a conversation and she talked about, when grownups are going through problems, this is what they do. It's their responsibility to get help because they can't be forced into it anymore. And I think that's such a big thing for me, just because of the fact that, I do have a kid now and I almost feel more responsible to get help when I need it. I don't feel like, I guess the best way I can put it simply is that my clock is ticking. And I keep that in mind, especially it just feels like I'm doing things for a greater cause now. I always look at the bigger picture. Before I felt like I had such a selfish mentality, but I almost feel like that's not an option anymore. And I think that was kind of my root motivation to say, you know what, I need help. I need to be not only in the right mental place for myself, but mentally be in the right place for someone I'm responsible for.
And so going to a question that we saw in the chat is around male influence on you growing up. Who was that? What did that look like? Both the good and bad, because we're shaped by both experiences. Could you just give a little bit about that?
For sure. So, yeah, I grew up with a stepdad for the first 12 years of my life. And you know, he's not a part of my life anymore, but he wasn't a bad dude at all. He, you know, I woke up in the morning, ran to him and, you know, jumped on his back. Like he was, I saw him as my superhero, especially because of the fact that, you know, I knew nothing else but that. He was my dad in a sense, you know, he was my dad. And so that was, I guess, one of the main ones because he was like my dad for 12 years of my life. But I also had, you know, and I'll also my grandfather, I don't want to dismiss him. He's also another role model that taught me a lot. He taught me a lot about emotional connection. Um, and so, yeah, I think I've had different types of role models and different like aspects of masculinity in those senses. And, you know, I've had role models that encourage me to talk about my emotions more than others, you know? And so I'd say my dad, my stepdad, my grandpa, you know, even basketball coaches, sports was a big thing for me. And, you know, the coaching was like, I saw it, I didn't just see it as coaching, I saw them as family too. And so, um, yeah.
I think a lot of times we think about family just as people who are blood, but family, like I mentioned, is both of y'all. It's people down the streets, the old head who dapped me up this morning. And so it's I encourage people to think about breaking free of our ideology of what family looks like, because it
Right,
can show up in so many different ways.
right.
So I'm gonna go right back to you, D, right? Because right from the beginning, fathers play a huge role in their child's health and development, whether it's biological or step. And studies have shown that father involvement during the prenatal period and the first years of life leads to children who are more school ready, who have an advanced vocabulary, enhanced social skills, are
Mhm.
better able to regulate their emotions, lifelong success, which we're trying to get at. But not only just for the father involved, but it also, or for the child involved, but it also positively impacts fathers and mothers and caregivers in general. And so my question to you, D, and then before I switch it over to Sara, is about how have you grown as a teen father over the last year?
For sure. Um, I think one of the main things is just my confidence as a father, because in the first, like I would say, couple of months of you know, being a teen father, I definitely felt almost like I felt brand new to it, and I almost felt like a kid raising a kid, and in the sense I still am that, but like I almost felt insecure in a sense that I didn't have what I needed to provide for my daughter emotionally. And I thought that that was like an age and maturity thing. And as time goes by, I'm realizing that nobody who has a kid was really ready to be a parent. Kids make you ready to be a parent. And so I think that's one of like the main things that have kind of I've realized that, and I'm realizing it more and more every day. Um, so yeah,
Thank you, thank you. And then for Sara, because we talked a little bit about in part one, which was once again all about the context setting. So if you don't have that link, we'll drop it into the chat so you can go back and look at it, which sets up today's. I want to talk about how has his growth affected you, because we talk a lot about in part one about stigma and discrimination around fathers' roles in society, and how it not only leaves some fathers to feel frustrated and powerless, but also for their mothers and for their family. So can you talk a little bit about how his growth has affected you?
Yeah, the first reaction to his growth is for me just surprise. I think the first, way that it affects me is to feel that personally, I feel validated. I feel like our struggle has not been in vain. It has affected me by humbling me, kind of sitting me down in my seat to watch and listen at the ways that he's been watching and listening, and that the lessons of life haven't fallen upon deaf ears. It's affected me by giving me new, as an educator myself who teaches young folks around Diako's age and a little bit older than Diako, to also really give credit and have a little bit more hope, I think, for what young folks are capable of. I think it has humbled me, really, his growth. And what it has done is taken a lot of the pressure off of, I have to do this and that and this and that in order for him not to make the same mistakes that I did, and in order for him to be better than I was, or to be able to navigate through this impossible thing that I saw teen parenthood as. You know, it has checked me in the ways of maybe projecting a lot of the stereotypes that I see within popular culture on teen parenthood, and seeing that it's not the way that it necessarily has to be in our family or others. So it's inspired me a lot. I'm so proud of you, son. I'm sitting here and I know, like, we're in front of all these people. I hope I'm not embarrassing you, but I am so proud of you, and it fills my heart to watch you grow and be the dad that you are for your daughter, even though I might have shared some, like, kind of embarrassing things
No,
in the
I'm not
interview,
embarrassed. And
talking about you wearing rubber gloves when you changed the poopy diaper that one time.
gotta do what you gotta do, you know?
But I'm so proud of you, and I'm learning so much from you. And that's really the number one way that your growth is impacting me, is it's teaching me.
Thank you, Mom.
Thank you.
I'm gonna,
It's your job, Sara. You're supposed to embarrass them, right? As parents, that's what we're supposed to do, Dee. We're supposed to embarrass our kids. Builds character. So, Mike, can we get to the questions about co-parenting?
yep, I'm
parent
working on
parenting?
that. I got
Okay.
you. I got
There's
you.
one, I was just gonna let you know, there's one in the actual Q&A that you may not be able to see.
I got that. I was just getting there.
You can see it? Okay, I didn't know
Got
because I
there.
was the host whether you could see it or not. Okay, cool beans. Thanks.
Sorry. All right. I don't know why I muted myself. First, I got to do a setup question, right? In order to move us into that space. That's a part of storytelling, y'all, right? And so, Sarah, I want to pop it to you, because you study, you teach, and essentially you are, because it's a core being of who you are. You're a feminist. And so I'm interested in hearing, what is a feminist, because we might have a lot of misconceptions. This is a multi-layered question, so stick with me here, right? What is a feminist? How have you imparted that onto Diako through your parenting? How have you seen Diako be a feminist dad? And how do you think feminism can support teen fathers to be present and powerful caregivers? And you're on mute before you start speaking.
Such a loaded question, Mike. And I think, to put it simply, but not reductively, feminism is about equity, over trying to kind of eliminate differences between gender identifications, between identities in general, right? It's not about trying to kind of level a playing field, or to try to get the position that men usually occupy for, or that stereotypically occupy for women. It's about equity. It's about access. And as a woman of color feminist, it's been referred to as third world feminism. my role is as a feminist who teaches ethnic studies, who teaches art history of people of color, is to really call out more what feminism is not than trying to define what feminism is. And my feminism for myself personally doesn't reside in my body. It doesn't reside in just the fight for reproductive justice. I can't call myself a feminist and then, for example, exploit undocumented domestic labor or vote in favor of a war, in support of war that is hurting women and children in other countries. Like these are the things that and I think about within feminist movements of people of color historically in this country, how women have had to push not only against, the mainstream and the patriarchy, however you want to understand that, it's become such a buzzword, but also to push against white feminism, to push against white liberal feminism, or to push the doors open to be able to kind of be included in those spaces. So, of course, Diako, as a father of a young, as a father of a baby girl, I've seen instinctively how his parenting has flowed in a direction that defines his own feminism, his own relationship with feminism. He does that by not parenting through gender stereotypes and mother or father binaries. He does that by encouraging her to really be independent and to look at what it is that interests her and to celebrate that. He does that by not enforcing upon her behaviors that are supposed to be, feminine or, not masculine, and so at the risk of, I don't want to like make this too academic, but I want to talk about and I want to bring up the ways in which some people of color have refused to even use the term feminism. Like the Black Panther women call themselves womanists. And there's a reason for that. It's because sometimes we're not included as women of color. And Diako's daughter being like what, 8 different ethnic backgrounds, truly a mixed little girl, is really carrying a powerful bloodline. And he's got to work cut out for him to celebrate the ways in which she can be empowered and raised to spread that empowerment.
And so I want to talk to you, Dee, about how you're taking all of that, those wisdoms, those ideas that your mother imparted upon you, and how are you then applying it to essentially your baby mama, right? And what is that co-parenting plan that you have with her? And is that code appointed? Is that something that you created on your own? And so how is that living and flowing in real life?
Yeah, so I think the first part of the question is kind of tricky, but I can answer how I'm navigating the co-parenting situation in general. Would you like me to do that? All right. So yeah, for sure. I talked about like my therapist making suggestions to me on, you know, I guess how to interact with my daughter's mom. And a lot of it, what he told me was kind of what I said, just a lack of sentimental emotion. And I think I talked about, having to learn that the hard way. And, just to be more transparent around that, I kind of did try to force a relationship with my daughter's mom when I did try to do that at one point, you know, and I had to learn for myself that I guess like our desires are different. She more desires to have the father of her child right where she wants him at all times, and I more desired just to have a happy family. And so obviously going through that and figuring that out is why the interactions are so brief and so professional and just the way they are now. And now I am still having my mom do the pickups and the drop-offs, but like my mom said, I'm coming up on 18 pretty soon, and I can't rely on that forever. And so I am going to come to a point where it's going to be her dropping off the baby to me and me picking her up, you know, and it's going to be just us. Um, and it's still going to be my responsibility to have that strength to say, you know what, I don't think being in a relationship is best for us, and to continue with that mindset, even though my mom's not being the third party in that. Um, and so right now, I guess to make our relationship more clear, like me and my daughter's mom, we don't have any social media interaction. She does not view my social media. She's blocked on Instagram and things like that, just because I don't want her having updates on exactly every single accomplishment and every single thing I'm doing in the moment, because I do fear that she's gonna, use that, and I don't know what she's gonna use that for, but I just fear that she's gonna use that for something negative. And I protect myself that way, and so that's how I operate.
Thank you. And again, if you have more questions or thoughts, please pop into the chat. We're going to keep this train movement. I want to talk about healing, because that's how we started with mental health, and I kind of want to roll back into that. And so I know that you two haven't had the greatest relationship with Diako's father, in which we talked offline about how that may have created some feelings of disappointment, right, amongst other things. And so now you, as a father, Diako, how are you seeing your relationship with your child as an opportunity to heal your relationship with your father? And then Sara, the same question to you.
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, just realizing the fact that, you know, my it's almost as if I understand my biological dad's emotions like perfectly now, even though he was never physically present in my life. And I can understand his emotions around, not being physically present, not being there, even though I'm not in the same situation. I can put myself in the same situation and kind of run a pre-interpretation and say, you know what, based off of how much I love my daughter, how would I feel if I wasn't present for her? And being a dad really allows me to do that. And I can't say I was able to do that before. Before, I had basically no understanding of my dad's emotions. I kind of just thought he was this, I guess, bad guy, But having a kid really gave me empathy in that sense, and really actually helped me with my forgiveness.
Thank you, Sara.
Yeah, I think I always tried to just not speak ill and follow the kind of unspoken rule book about that. Like, don't speak ill about the other parent. And in doing that, I might have overcorrected so much that we just never spoke of the other parent. And we didn't really have a starting point to begin processing or healing that. And I kind of always had a sense that it would be Diako that would lead the way with that and show me his readiness or his need to talk about it whenever he was ready, and I think that some of the ways that Diako is talking about interactions with his daughter's mom, as we were going back to previous question, about feminism, that we can kind of see how like that respect for the other partner, and not just the other partner, but in this case, this young woman is kind of being also taught, and he's practicing it through that interaction, and he's thinking about also and having compassion for how difficult it is to maintain a co-parenting relationship with the other parent. And so he's he's shown that he's starting to process now, and he's starting to forgive now where it comes to his own biological dad, kind of um, through that experience, and maybe setting himself apart as a feminist in those ways, the ways that his biological dad maybe wasn't able to be.
We talk about some of the intersectional realities that you face, Diako, in your everyday life that perhaps doesn't support whether it's the father-mother relationship or the father-child relationship that you're working so hard to cultivate?
Uh-huh. I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question. Can you say it again?
So thinking about your intersectional identities, right? The intersectionality part around that, whether it's your culture, your gender, your class, the fact that you're a teen, like you're a student, all these different things. How are those affecting your relationship with your child or with your baby mother?
Like, how are like my different cultures and my I guess different parts of myself affecting that?
Exactly.
Yeah, I say so. First off, I want to start off. My mom said something important. She said that she talked about how diverse my daughter's ethnicity is, and I think coming from a diverse ethnicity, definitely not as diverse as my daughter's, but coming from a diverse ethnicity myself, almost gives me a lot more leverage and skill when it comes to teaching my daughter to be in touch with all of her different cultures. Because I have experience with that. I have experience with, at one point in my life being insecure about my Middle Eastern side. I have experience to where if my daughter felt any insecurities or things like that, I would feel totally, totally comfortable being able to be there for her in that sense. Um, I think also on top of that, you asked how it affects my relationship with my daughter's mom. Um, I think I think me and her are definite because she's Black and Filipino, and I'm Mexican, Iranian, Colombian. So the cultures differ, but it also gives me understanding of because my daughter's mom is a little bit insecure about her Black side, and I don't mean to put her on the spot, but it's relevant to what we're talking about. Um, and she is a little bit insecure of her Black side, and I feel almost like I can be more empathetic about that just because I've been insecure about my Middle Eastern side. And so I don't have like I guess like a craving, or it doesn't even feel like an option to me to hate on her for that, because it feels almost as if I was in the same exact position. And so I feel like that's what I feel like.
And could you talk a little bit about what are some of the supports or services beyond your therapist, your counselors, myself, people in the community? What has helped or maybe not have supported you as you've gone through this journey?
Yeah. What has helped is for people to I think for people to encourage me and make me feel, I don't know why, but make me feel like more of a father. I don't, even though I'm a father, sometimes I lack that confidence, and I'm working on that. I'm not perfect. And when people tell me things like, I'll have my friends like, you're such a good dad, dude, or like, look at, like, she looks up to you, like those type of that type of praise and affirmation is super important to me. And I think continuing that is I value that. And I think when it comes to what has kind of inhibited that growth, um, kind of the opposite of that kind of thing. I mean, I haven't really heard anybody tell me I'm a bad dad, but just the limitations that I talked about before. You're allowed to do this and you're not allowed to do that. I to the bottom of my heart, I really don't appreciate that. And I like to have that freedom, that emotional freedom. Um, yeah.
And then for Sarah, who disappeared on me, maybe I can get her back her attention. I'm going to ask a question around, because the first part that we talked about was a lot about myths in part one. There's a lot of myths that are bestowed upon our males. And so can you talk about the ways in which you're seeing Diako debunk them in real time? Some of the myths that you've seen? And you're on mute.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I just had to ask the gardener if he could give me a moment of silence outside in the I was like, oh, I don't want to just change my setting. Yeah, talking about some of the myths around fatherhood and specifically teen fatherhood, I'm guessing, and related to the intersectionality piece. Mike, yeah, I think the myths are in large part formed by popular culture. And we think about that, it's like, it sounds funny to say this, but like I think about like Maury Povich and things like that, that are kind of like spreading a lot of this kind of the scandal and the hype around how it becomes like a baby mama, baby daddy drama, especially around people of color, and how we often are sensationalized a lot of the time, and kind of exoticized. Our stories kind of becoming these dramas or these kind of soap operas for other people to just get some kind of like excitement out of, or that kind of a value. So I think that those myths are perpetuated because they provide some kind of like a gossip that stems from that stereotype. You know what I mean? And those stereotypes. And so it really is our role to not worry so much about, I think, reputation, but to really think about how each one of our roles can be, how Diako was talking about before, how it's not so much about how we look or how we seem, but how we live. And to try, each one of us, on an individual basis, but also very consciously in our collective, our participation in the collective, to kind of form these conscious conversations like we're doing right here, to form part of these conscious conversations, and continue looking and creating our own new platforms to speak truth to power, like to these myths, and not worry so much about like not allowing ourselves to be maybe sensationalized or tokenized, as people of color, and fathers of color, right? In Diako's case, teen fathers, but to just keep playing the right way, and defining really what those values are for each one of us, and continuing to consciously build collectives that are aligned with those values and based on those values.
Going back to you, D, I want to talk about something that we saw in the chat. What do you wish you had heard or could hear from other men and males about your role as a father?
I think, to be honest, I think being a protector is actually a really important one to me. Being being capable of being a protector is really important to me. Having that be validated by other men specifically, that feels really good to be, when guys tell me, dude, I knew if something happened to your daughter, you would be there within half a second. You know what I mean? Like things like that puts a fire in me. And I love those type of I love that type of affirmation, specifically being a protector.
And going back to, I only got about 2 more questions, but going back to part one, once again, to make that connection between structure and theory all the way back down to application, how it looks like in real life. The question is, I asked in part one, is what do young fathers of color need? And so Diako, what do you need?
I think that we need encouragement. I think encouragement is the key word here. Encouragement to, I talked about emotional freedom. I kind of talked my head off about that, but encouragement to not be ashamed of being a teen father, to not be, I guess, to not be like encouraged to perpetuate a stereotype. That's kind of a complex concept. I'm sorry, but not, I think that's what encouragement to be your own unique type of teen father, to be your own person, encouragement to, I guess, not feel like you're the same as every other teen father just because you are a teen father. And encouragement, lastly, to explore your own identity as a teen father.
And so I think that is my provocation to everyone on this chat. Let's give him some encouragement. What's one thing, what's a couple of sentences that you want to share with him to let him know that he's got this? He's doing a fantastic job, y'all. We don't ever give people the roses when they're alive. So I want to make sure that he is seeing that and you are filling his cup up today. And as y'all do that, I want to leave y'all with one last question for both Diako and Sara. And that is, maybe you'll review this again in a couple years. Maybe in 15 years with your daughter, right? You're going to sit down, you're going to be like, hey, remember that one time we did this for the Washington Interagency Council?
Yeah.
And you're going to rewatch this. And so what's one message that you want to share with Star right now to her? And then Sara, what's one message that you want to share, I guess, to Diako in 15 years when he's rewatching this?
I think what I want to share to my daughter is that you are a blessing because you've taught me more about myself than I was capable of learning about myself, like by myself, if that makes sense. You've, not that that's your responsibility, but you brought a lot of things to light to me that I never thought I would realize about myself. And I appreciate that.
And Diako, I want to say that I love you. I'm going to continue to be behind you, supporting you, and providing a safe space that you can always call home and you can always bring your daughter to if you feel the path starts getting a little dim or confusing in front of you. You can always come back home. And I am going to continue to learn from you and always be here to teach whatever I can teach as well through the things I did right and the things I didn't do so right. And I want to give you all the encouragement that you need from here, from your home base, that I possibly can. You are doing great. You are doing great. You are a great young dad. And there's going to be a lot of benefits to being young with your daughter. A lot of benefits, a lot of things that you're going to be able to enjoy in ways that a lot of parents right now are not able to, because of your youth and how you're so close to her in age. Right. In a lot of ways. So don't forget about the benefits and what a gift and a blessing this is, to be a parent, and just keep fighting the good fight and sharing and giving away your recovery to others. Keep doing your work of service.
Thank you, Mom.
I love you.
And so before I turn it over to Anne, I would just end with, the conversation does not end here, actually. There's 2 additional recordings that we did because once again, learning distance just happened in the 90 minutes that we're together. It happens 365 days of the year. And so we're going to leave you with 2 additional bonus interviews, one that I had with Sara and then one between Diako and Sara to continue the conversation. So thank you. Anne.
Amazing, you two, you three. I put it in chat, D, but I'll say it out loud. I am just awed at how much you have learned after having been a parent for 1 year that many parents still haven't learned. And your ability to have your North Star really be your daughter is such an adult place to be. And I'm just so appreciative of both of you for sharing your stories with the kind of candor that you did. It really helps folks to hear stories. So I will thank you profoundly for your time. Thank you, Mike, for everything you do with us. It's always so thoughtful and so meaningful, and lots of love coming to you through the chat and appreciations. We have a lot going on right now, and so I'm going to do a little bit of a fire hose moment here at the end. Please do fill out the evaluation. It helps us determine where to go from here. Please do go back to our website and look at prior sessions if there's a topic that strikes you, because they've all been amazing. We have our summit coming up. So to Mike's point, learning doesn't ever stop. I hope for any of you. I hope you're always learning. And one opportunity to continue to learn is to come to our summit in Tacoma live, all of you. And I see folks in this group that I've already seen on the registration. So for thanks to you that have already signed up. But it's a chance for us to come together and continue this conversation. We have been doing a study of fathers in Washington over the last year, and that will be released on that day with our partners. And of course, we will always hear from fathers at every event we do. So we'll have a panel of dads. And there is a survey out right now for fathers to share their voice directly with the study. And Dieter will pop that in the chat as well. And sadly, Dee, we can't do adolescents because the research people say there are special things you need to do when you're working with people that aren't yet adults. So that's a bummer to me, but it means to me that in the future we need to do that. So I am going to definitely lobby that with our researchers to say, how do we capture this amazing voice? So please forward the survey to dads, to any dad that you know that might want to fill it out. And please fill it out yourself if you have that hat that you wear when you come to this table. So the next session, we go from something which is very heart and relational to something which is very complicated and legal, which is the child support system. So it's a bit of a shocker. We're going to take you a little bit out of this space and into the space of how do you interact with a system that's hard to understand. Jim Ward, who I believe was here today, is going to be doing that for us. And Dieter has already put that link in the chat. That will be coming up in April. And then we'll take May off because of the summit. So you won't see us in May, but you'll see us right back at it in June. So please sign up for the summit, join us to continue this conversation. It is no cost. It's at the Tacoma Conference Center. And any dads that want to attend, we have resources to support them. So travel, lodging, food, childcare, so that their time can be honored in addition to the professionals' time. So thank you so much for joining us for this amazing conversation. I want to know how it goes with you too. I want to check back in, Dee. I want to hear how you're doing over time. And thank you so much, Mike, for jumping into these conversations with us multiple times. And now everyone can see why he's a regular on our series. So have a wonderful afternoon, and we hope that we see you again.
Thank you
Thanks,
so much.
everybody.